Hey Tanya, I'm so happy to be here with you.
Brilliant. Lovely to be here.
Can we start by a little question, which is not my favorite, but which is important, which is who are you and how have you become who you are today?
Oh, we're going deep to start with. I am a counsellor and master certified in the Demartini method, and I've been applying and helping people apply the Demartini method in business and life for 15 years. And how did I become who I am? It's a very interesting question. I feel like life's challenges threw me into who I am because so 2009, I felt like a recluse and hiding away from the world. And I used to get this like really high social anxiety, like to the point where one time I was driving in my car on the way to a birthday party with my partner at the time, and I'm driving, and then I just have this like panic attack in the middle of the road where I'm like holding on to dear life to this steering wheel. And I like can't move, and he's having to pry my fingers off and then put me into the back seat and drive me home because I couldn't face the public. I couldn't face going and speaking to people. And so the experience, I guess, how life just kind of catapults you. I ended up at a personal development program after my boyfriend died, and I learned a particular methodology, one that you can use for a lot of different reasons. A lot of emotional charges that you have, you can go and dissolve and resolve in a very short period of time. And I was selected with 210 people in the room to go up on stage and work with Dr. Demartini and to resolve my grief that I was feeling. And so because I was studying counselling at the time and I had been told it's a 2 to 5 year experience, or whether you'll get a chance to gain your life back again. I thought I had a really long road ahead of me because it had only been a few months beforehand. And he was able to help me make some profound shifts and just have gratitude and a deep appreciation for the experience in an hour and 20 minutes. And so that moment was the moment that I decided that I wanted to actually dedicate my life to helping other people to apply this in their life, because I've always felt like I've had a drive and a desire to serve people. And then I found a way that through life's experiences kind of catapulted me into learning more about that can really profoundly make a difference to people.
What was you doing before 2009?
So I nursed for a while and decided that I really started that journey because my older sister was a nurse, and she still is. And she's like, Tanya, you'd make an amazing nurse. You're very caring, you're nurturing, you should go do that. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll go do that. Kind of doing what I was more told to do. And I did really enjoy it for a long period of time. But there was one particular day when I was nursing in a hospital in Brisbane, and I just realized my core values of what I wanted to do to actually help people. I didn't feel that environment served my mission anymore and what I wanted to do. I felt like there was a real value challenge and just in terms of what I felt was right and okay. And so I decided that I'd go back and retrain. And so I went and did counselling. So I went back and restudied so that I could get into actually working with people's mindset rather than working from the outside in, helping and shift them from the inside out.
And at the time, how did you manage being a nurse and being really anxious socially?
It's so interesting. In my work environment, I found that I don't have the social anxiety show up because even though when I nursed, I personal trained for a little bit, trying to figure out my path of what I wanted to do. I did some work on sales and did some sales calls for a period of time as well. So at work, I don't tend to have social anxiety. It's just in social experiences and social events, it like bubbles up inside, and I'd really struggled for a long time.
Yeah, I'm asking that because I think can feel the same. I can speak with a large audience, but even if I'm meeting someone in the business context, it's easy. But when there is not this mask, or when people don't know me, it's more difficult. How did you resolve that?
Yeah. Well, I'm the same. So if people know me, I have no problem because they seem to have a conversation. We already know how to connect, and it's normally on work because they want to pick my brain on work, or we don't talk business or mindset. But so the Demartini method I found to be the most profound way to be able to dissolve my social anxiety. Because when I dug deep and I asked myself, like, what was I really afraid of? Because those moments where I was like, holding onto the steering wheel and I just couldn't go, I was actually fearing at that time because my boyfriend had criticized me for what I was wearing. And so then the bubbling up of that criticism and what that felt like, and I had projected into that going out to the party and felt like other people would criticize me. And then that almost put me into the freeze response. Well, it did put me into the freeze response. And so it was actually me being afraid of criticism that actually was driving my sense of social anxiety. And so what's really beautiful about the application of the Demartini method, it gives you a tool and a process to be able to walk through step by step by step to be able to dissolve that. Because criticism is, if we're attached to praise, we can attract criticism. If we perceive that criticism is only negative, then we're going to exaggerate it and make it worse than what it actually is. And once we take off the emotional charge and we also dissolve any attachment we have to the inverse and getting praised, we can actually be more resilient to and adaptable to criticism. So I found that process as I worked through all the moments I've had in my life where people have criticized me and found benefits, and what would be the drawback had someone actually praised me instead, and what would the cost have been if they did that, and did that on so many moments that actually I don't even think about going out to a public event now and thinking about, will people like me or not like me? Will they praise me or criticize me? I just go out and I just connect with people and engage with them. Like, that's my focus.
And how can someone who is listening can walk through the real problem of social anxiety? What question can someone ask to himself to identify where is the charge and dissolve that?
For sure. So, I mean, I wouldn't want to say that it's only rejection or criticism that people have issues with social anxiety, because it's a whole lot of things. And so what it is about ultimately what I call finding the problem underneath the problem, because we've got the surface problem, the anxiety and that feeling that people have. And so it's like, hang on, what's actually triggering it in the first place? And as we dig deep, we want to find the problem underneath the problem. And so what we want to do is we want to isolate the moment that is actually occurring, and we want to look at what are the triggers around that's actually creating that anxiety in the first place. And so is it someone that you're going to go and meet that you have the anxiety around? Is it around not being smart enough? Or is it because we also want to find out the trigger behind it as well? So you imagine, from the moment you're born until today, every moment that you're having is accumulating emotional charges. And so if you've had an event when you're 7 and you went out to a social party and you were pushed in the pool, and then you went out to another party and you were made fun of and teased at in front of the entire group, then you go out to another social event, or you do something at school, maybe it's a play, and you make a mistake and then everyone laughs, and then you just build up these charge when it comes to the social events. So what we want to be able to do is unpack or just identify all of those moments, all the moments that have brought up some fear or anxiety or challenge or charge that you have, and then it'd be going and asking those 2 questions, which is, what's the benefit of them being able to, of what happened? Because when we're able to do that, we almost like open our mind and our awareness to a greater divine perfection of that moment rather than seeing one side of it.
So the biggest challenge is to identify what I'm really afraid of.
Yes. And then go back to moments where that actually happened.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. And I had a question, because you based your career on the Demartini method, and it's not something I would recommend to an entrepreneur. I would recommend to an entrepreneur to pick up a niche and to pick up a problem and be based maybe on the problem and not on the method. I think a lot of people have asked you this question, or you ask yourself this question: why have you done that?
I get you, and because it's not my method, and people are like, Tanya, you should go and create your own. And I'm just so I am so inspired, connected. I truly believe in this method. I believe it's life-changing, and it's not just life-changing for today, but in 100 years' time, it will still be life-changing for people. It really can deeply, and what I also can appreciate about it as well, I feel like that a lot of the experiences I've had throughout my whole life have been leading up to being able to help get this work out there to more people, and actually the application of the work out there to more people. So I don't know, I just wake up, I'm just so inspired by it. I feel like instead of kind of running through life and kind of questioning what's going on and why do I feel this way, and I feel like it's just the most beautiful tool to be able to answer so many people's questions and resolve so many problems. So I feel so connected to it, and I feel so inspired. I feel like I'm contributing to being able to bring it out to the world.
Have you ever think about having a different positioning and maybe positioning on a specific problem instead of the method, or positioning on your method? Have you ever think about that?
Well, I mean, you've been to my power workshops, which I run once a year, and I would say that that's definitely my method. And instead of it being, the Demartini method is known as a new paradigm of thinking, and I feel like the power workshop is definitely a new paradigm of living, of how you live and breathe the work in your everyday life and integrate it into your everyday life. And so, but I've definitely grappled with that, idea of okay, so I'm very known for the Demartini method, and that's why people come to me, is because they want to apply the Demartini method. And so I'm very known in that. And 15 years later, the idea then of going to go off and do something else. So I've definitely started and branched out more to do work with coaches, because I really, after so many years of working one-on-one with clients and also in group environments, I feel like I have a lot to contribute to be able to help not only just with the application of the Demartini method, but also the nuances inside of coaching that a lot of people are not aware of, and how can I tune people into that more so that they can pick up and they can also experience the mystical experience of coaching. And so, because there is that deeper meaning when you touch and connect in with it, and you help people to connect in with it, and they feel like there's meaning and a mysticalness to life is so profound. So I feel like I have that to offer, and we're definitely building that inside of Maximum Growth, the group coaching business that we have. And I feel like we're niching more in that particular area, but I'm still definitely known for the Demartini method.
Yeah. And what do you, maybe for people who listen, we can start with this question. What is the Demartini method, and how do you summarize that?
Yeah, so the Demartini method is a series of 14 questions that help you to resolve emotion that you have and misperceptions or perceptions that you have that are running and ruling your life. And so there's a systematic process that you do to be able to resolve and get an outcome. And the ultimate outcome is to take you to gratitude and love of your heart, certainty and presence in your mind, and enthusiasm and inspiration in your body. And so we do that through this a step-by-step process. And first of it's identifying what you're actually charged with and what the actual issue is. And that can be emotionally charged by looking up and an infatuation, and looking down and a resentment. So there's two types of emotional charges that people would have, and we would work through that. The next step would be then looking at our reflection, because the world is ultimately our mirror. It's whatever we perceive on the outside is within us, and we have an opportunity to own the reflective part of whatever the outside's reflecting to us and owning it within us. The next part is then dissolving. If we're infatuated with something, what's the downside? If you're resentful of something, what's the upside? So that instead of oscillating with highs and lows, peaks and troughs, we actually get to appreciate that all our life experiences is neutral until we project our values and our beliefs and everything else onto it, and we judge it. And so what we want to do is dissolve out that judgment. So we do that on the individual we're working on. We also do it on ourselves. We then go into this beautiful aspect of the application of the Demartini method, where the moment we start to put a perception onto someone, we've disowned the opposite side of them. So if we think that they're critical, we've forgotten the times that they're praising. If we perceive them to be on time, we've forgotten the times that they're late. So we kind of hone in and we select into one side and we forget the other side. So it's allowing an opportunity now to wake up the opposite side. And so we also get to appreciate that there's a divine synchronicity in every single moment. And then the last part of the method, which I feel like is a game changer for a lot of people, is that our fantasy that we have on life actually drives our nightmare, because the mind has an entangled two sides. And so because there's an entanglement of two sides, the more we get attached to one side, the more the universe or the world brings in the opposite. So it's like the more you want money, the more you don't have money. The more you attach to a relationship, the more you don't have a relationship. The more you want your family to all be together and peaceful, the more there's war. And so the more we're attached to one side, the more we bring in the suffering. So this helps us to dissolve that attachment we have, so we can love and appreciate the world and life as it is right now. So that's essentially a brief summary of the Demartini method. But you can use it on so many different issues. So it can be on whether you're struggling with wealth, whether you want to attract a relationship, whether you have an intimate connection that you're having emotional charges around and you're struggling with, do I want to stay or do I want to go? If you're having conflict with your business partner, if you are having family dynamic issues, or you've been through grief and death, or you just want to, do something really profound in the world and you want to wake up some genius within you. You're able to use it on so many different ways in so many different levels.
Yeah. And how do you prevent that someone feel like nothing is important after seeing that everything is perfect and there is downside and upside to everything? And how do you prevent that? I see that you post, I don't know where I've seen that recently, but you share the 10 steps, the 10 stages of the of the Demartini method.
Yeah. There is we call that, so that maybe stage 3, where you get to indifference, and it's like you then realize, you used to live in a life where you're very emotionally charged, and then maybe over time you start applying the work, you start to dissolve your charges and you're less triggered by things that are happening on the outside. And then it can get to a period of time where you feel meh, like maybe empty could be a word, or just non-attached, or different. And so that period of time is definitely a stage that a lot of people go through, because they have this expectation put on them that they need to live in balance and this equilibrium state all the time, but no one can. One of the things I definitely ring true with, and especially what we filter through with our maximum growth classes each and every week, is that it's okay to be human, and it's okay to feel, and it's okay to have emotion, and it's okay, even though we have a tool to be able to dissolve our emotions, we could not dissolve every single emotion all the time throughout our entire life for the rest of our life. It's just not possible. And we can't live in a state of gratitude and love, certainty, presence, enthusiasm, and inspiration all the time either. You actually want a richness of feeling and emotion, and because that's what makes life interesting, and you can connect with people, and it moves you. So because then sometimes people apply the work because they actually want to avoid their emotions. They don't actually want to feel. It's interesting. I had a client session today, and I was asking them, because they were very charged with a family member who was very charged, and it's like, I can't be in their space. Well, what are they reflecting to you? And it's like, oh, and dropped and realized, actually, I don't want to feel anything. And they're just they're feeling all of their anger and resentment and their bitterness to life. And so what we want to do is embrace our feeling. It's like finding that beautiful balance between how much we feel and then how much we go and apply the work and equilibrate our minds. But if we get stuck and we do feel like we're living in that indifferent stage and we feel like we're not moving forward, what we can use to propel us again is our voids. So I'm really big on understanding what your voids are, because your voids are what drives you to what you do today, your values, and propels you with a vision and mission. So let's say we have so many emotional charges and we work through all of our emotional charges. You can never collapse and never dissolve all your emotional charges around your voids. Like some people have, say, a void on learning, that no matter how much work they do around their emotional charges around it, they're still going to have a drive and desire and a void wanting to fill that insatiable appetite to learn. And so when we understand what our voids are, then we can understand what our current values are, and we can create a vision and a mission that's aligned with that. And so that no matter how much work you do on dissolving and resolving all your charges, that still drives you to give you purpose and to give you mission and to give you that energy and focus in life. Because that's what happens is when you do all the work but you don't have a focus, now you're left with, what's the point? Well, but when you have your void and you know what that is, or your voids accumulated together, and you know what your values are, and you have a very inspired vision, then when you do all the work, you're left with, wow, I've got something really meaningful that I want to go and contribute to humanity.
Yeah, but at this period in your life, since you know the Demartini method, when you are like, nothing seems
yes,
inspiring for me.
Yeah, that was about 6 years in.
Yeah,
I've definitely had I've had that would be probably the most the most clearest moment where I felt like I had lost my purpose, and that was because I at that time was traveling Australia, speaking, teaching Breakthrough Integration Day, which was a follow-up program for people who attended the Breakthrough here in Australia. And we would have 200 odd, sometimes 300 people in a breakthrough. And we were doing 5 or 6 of them a year. So I was getting to do some follow-up programs and some webinars for the people after every 2 weeks. And so they'd come on a 12-month journey with me to integrate and apply the Demartini method. And that company went into receivership. And so my opportunity to keep on doing what I was doing kind of just disappeared, and quite quickly. And it was along with, some personal stuff, it was definitely a really big shock. And I felt like lost is the best way, like just, lost and unsure of my future, because the future that I had pictured had disappeared. And then it's that having to, take time to kind of rebuild yourself again. But I felt like my entire identity shifted in that at that time, having to now figure out, well, hang on, who am I first? Because I can't go out to the world if I don't know who I am anymore. And who I am was very much entangled and wrapped up in what I was doing. And now I'm not doing that anymore. So it felt like a Phoenix rising moment where it felt like I burnt everything down to the ground, and then had to spend a lot of time like getting to know myself at this new version of me, and then being able to go out to the world again and find my inspiration.
How long how long does it take?
How long does it take? That journey for me, I started in 2015, and I would say by the end of 2016 was when I definitely felt, so it was, I'd say maybe 15 months to 18 months where I spent a lot of time going inward and doing a lot of different type of work to be able to do some deeper healing and rediscover who I was at this new version of life. And because life changed and I needed to also shift with it. It took a while.
And it can be a really difficult moment, because it's the kind of a moment where you don't want to ask this question, because you don't have the energy to ask this question, and you don't want to do it, and you're like, and in these times, I feel like this question seems so difficult, and so it's like running a marathon.
Yeah, but I think because if we focus on the outcome, it's very difficult to figure out where are you going if you haven't figured out who are you. And when we have cataclysmic changes in life, when something drastically changes, our identity completely shifts. And so we then want to be able to, first of all, come back, like to ask that question first, who am I? And maybe where have you been? And who are you? And then after you know and you have a solid sense of self, that's when you can go out to deliver your service and share your service with the world. So I think a lot of people try to go, well, where am I going? But hang on, let's just figure out who are you first.
Yeah. What are the advice that you can give to people for answering this question? Because it can be really intimidating. You are like with a blank sheet of paper and there is this question, who I am, what can I do with that?
Kind of, actually, I'll do a different. It is a blank piece of paper, and I want you to imagine a circle in the middle. And inside the circle, we would have all the experiences and the people that you feel like you can be yourself with. And when you put all of those in the middle, and then the people on the outside, we then start to put the people on the outside that we can't be ourselves around. And the experiences that we have that we feel, actually, that wasn't really truly me. I did something that felt against my soul or against who I am. And so we want to put all those experiences in the outside of the circle and who we are in the inside of the circle. And so basically that's a roadmap for you. Okay, great. So we want to work on the things on the outside, all the things that fracture your identity, because essentially the reason why we can't be ourselves is because we feel like we subordinate to the outside world and we inject what they want for us. We might also have a fantasy on who we think we should be, and then that's also fracturing ourselves. And so that just gives beautiful content and rich content for us to do some inner work around. And then as we just cross those parts off on the outside of the circle that we've dissolved, resolved, and evolved from, then we'll be able to express and be more of ourselves in the middle part of the circle. So I would start there.
Okay. Is it an exercise that you're teaching, or is it something that you come up with now?
It is actually something I'm teaching because
I never hear that. Okay.
So because what I've realized a lot with coaches is there are some coaches who want to be coached and some coaches who want to coach. And so when there are coaches who come in and they're still trying to figure out who are they, then their identities are really, they have to have, in order to go out to the world and serve people and to coach people, you have to have a solid sense of self. Because when you have a solid sense of self and you feel like you know your identity, it's then you become almost like a guiding post for your clients to be able to do the same. And so what we want to be able to, so what I've noticed is that some people in the coaching world are still kind of figuring out their self along the journey. They're still kind of figuring out who am I, like what is my identity? And so identity is a really big piece of what I've been really focused on the last, say, 6 months or so, because I've realized it's actually the beginning of the whole journey, in the whole coaching journey. If you don't have that foundation there and that solid sense of self, then and then you subordinate more to other people, because then you end up listening to more mentors and taking in more information, and it kind of gets very overwhelming, and then you're kind of like more lost in this sense of self, because you're losing your sense of authority and ownership of who you are. And so I feel like that's a foundation for coaches, but everyone else in the world too. Like everyone benefit from it. Yeah, it'd be a very different world if everyone knew who they were and weren't subordinating to the outside world.
Yeah. What have you learned in the last 6 months about identity?
That the biggest part has been subordination. So it's that those that we subordinate to, we lose a sense of self. It's kind of like an enmeshment. So when we are maybe growing up in our experience, when we're childhood, teen years, and it can be from a sense of safety that people go into this, well, I need to feel safe and secure and okay, and so it's easier for me to like appease someone else or to be close to them to feel safe. And so then they lose their sense of identity because they're trying to just, be okay. And so then in an adult life, that still shows up. So people are still appeasing other people. They're still doing maybe what their clients want them to do, or what their, authorities want them to do, and they're not taking ownership of their own life. Or it's not even ownership of their own life. It's more that they just have forgotten who they are. And so what we want to be able to do is dissolve that dynamic. So we call it, it's actually called fawning. So if we have fight, flight, fright, or freeze response, we also have a response which is called fawn, which is like the animal fawn. And so it's where you go and over people please. And that's really essentially you've lost your boundaries, and you've lost your needs. You don't even know what you need anymore, and you don't have boundaries set in place to hold true to what's important to you, and you enmesh with someone else. And so we want to know that when we're doing it in the first place, and we can then normally feel it. You normally feel like this isn't even me. You get this internal dialogue that starts happening, and that gives you feedback. So first of all, we want to recognize and acknowledge when we're going through those moments. And then the next part is then it's like working on the people that we've looked up to, and basically going, what's the benefit of listening to yourself rather than them? Because essentially you want to be able to feel like it's more valuable and it's safer for you to listen to you than it is to someone else.
Yeah.
So that would be, I definitely say, the biggest thing I've learned around identity.
I can see that a lot in the web entrepreneurs market and coaches, because everybody is like, I don't know, and I will follow this strategy of this guru, and my life will be better. And after 3 years, they're like, but what I have started, what's the point of all of that? And maybe I'm telling my story when I'm saying that, but because there is but and it's always a question I'm asking to myself, which is, what is the limit in the marketing about between you sell a lot and you will promise something that will change the life of your clients, but you're selling a fantasy and maybe they will lose themselves in the process, or you are really objective in your marketing but you're not selling anything, and what is the right thing to do between are you asking yourself this question?
I definitely have asked that question. Yes, I've definitely asked that question. Because in order to get someone to move and buy something, you need to create some kind of emotional charge for them to take action. And I would love to talk about the, meaningful and mystical experience that people can have, and the deeply connected experience, and a transcendental feeling that you feel like there's no space and time between the individual you've been working on and you, and you can have an entire room of people throughout the entire world in tears and goosebumps and gratitude for this moment. That's not going to sell. I mean, unless you've had that experience and you know what that is, you're like, I want that again. But it's not going to sell, and it's not also the reason why. So I definitely have grappled with that same idea of like how to best do it. At the end of the day, what I know is, as a coach, I can't be responsible for someone else's results. If I sit with someone and I'm with them for 1 or 2 hours a week or a month, and then their results that they have for the rest of their week or the rest of their month is then determinant on me, I'm going to have a bottleneck of how many clients I can take on, because I'm then shouldering so many more responsibility. There would be no way I could do group coaching like I do now, because then it would be like I'm now responsible for everyone else. So I definitely know that what I feel is important is that you feel like the service that you offer is authentic and you feel like it's aligned. I think if we feel like we're going to manipulate someone to get an outcome, they're probably going to come in and they're probably going to be the most difficult clients that you're going to have to ever work with, because they've felt like they've been manipulated. And particularly in the coaching field, where it's an exchange of energy. It's not just your time that you're trading. It's an exchange of energy. And if you've coached for long enough, you'll realize there are some people that you can coach and it is like fire between the two of you, and you're going off and there's big realizations and really shifting. And there's other time it feels like you're literally either pulling teeth out of them or you're dragging them along, and it's so much energy just to get them because their buy-in isn't there. I know I would rather have fewer people with a higher buy-in than more people because it looks great on the outside, but having to energetically pull them all along, that's hard. So I feel like it's that beautiful dance between stay authentic, deliver a message out, but it's okay if that message has an emotional charge and helps people to take action, actually buy it, and then deliver on the service.
Yeah. You were talking about the quality of the client. It's not the word that you're using, the quality of the client, but it's how I'm perceiving it. And have you ever asked yourself this question, which is, what's the limit between choosing my client and being clear on the kind of clients I want, and no matter what, I will attract positive and negative clients, and the more I'm the more I'm trying to get the perfect client, the more I will attract the
apologies in advance if this is what you teach, but I'm not a big fan of ideal client, because if you then turn around and say there's an ideal client out there for you, well, really basically it's kind of saying that there's this individual has to fit into a particular box and parameter of who you want them to be, but not loving them for who they are, and what they can teach you and how you can grow. And they have to have this particular problem with this particular issue, and they want this particular outcome, and they have to have this particular energy and this level of commitment. And so because we've boxed them in, it's kind of like, imagine we do that in an intimate relationship. Oof,
people
that
do.
Would be
people.
And so I feel like I know personally, like having I've worked with a lot of people and a lot of different issues because I've obviously niched in the Demartini method, and so I've attracted a lot of clients and a lot of a lot of different issues. And so what I've learned over that time is that there's a lot of learning you can do from clients that aren't necessarily ideal. Because if you talk about stretching your skills, they force you. Like I had a client just a couple of days ago, and we were struggling, like just kind of like that walking through mud. But I'm having to go, okay, how can I get this to land for them? And I'm having to think of an alternative way, not landing, okay? An alternative, let me think about it from this angle. Then I dropped in, I was like, well, what about this? And like, okay, I get it now. And I was like, okay. So then it's forced me to be more artful, more creative, more trying to figure out what their values are and what will help them to move. And it makes me more efficient at coaching when I have clients that aren't necessarily ideal. So I think if you're wanting to grow your coaching skills, then just wanting to serve clients would be the wisest way to be, rather than having a particular ideal. I'm not saying don't niche, definitely niche, but having be open to lots of different clients. I also know that the people who come and that you feel, I call like sticky. It probably doesn't make a lot of sense because it's like honey, but they're like sticky clients, the ones that come in with a lot of stuff and they aren't necessarily maybe have the particular issue that you want to work with. What I've noticed is when I get clients, they end up going to the direction of purpose and mission. They might have some sexual stuff along the way because that's where I first niched when I first started. I love purpose and I love mission, and that kind of comes out. And so I don't get them to go that way, but it goes that way anyway. And so what they starts out with like, okay, this isn't quite the ideal. By the time we finish our 12 sessions or we finish our 6 months or 12 months of sessions, it's actually been an amazing experience. And we've kind of worked through what I call their ball of mess. People start with this big ball of mess that they give you. And as we start pulling the threads around it, we get to kind of the core issues of what they're actually needing to work on. And that tends to be purpose and mission and like how can I live a more fulfilled life. And that's at the core of what they really truly want. It's just on the outside it didn't display as that.
I have a lot of questions that come to my mind when I'm hearing that. What is the first one? Do you have sometimes unsatisfied clients on your one-on-one coaching? And if so, how do you manage that yourself internally?
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
I've got one particular individual that pops into mind. So they have a large practice, and they came because they wanted to make a transition into something else. And so they came and said, okay, this is what I want to do and I want you to help me. And I was like, okay, great. We're just going to work through all the emotional roadblocks you have of transitioning into a new field. It wasn't quite completely different. There was a little bit of synergy, but it was very new for them. And so we worked through. So he decided that he would do 12 sessions with me. And he'd show up for every session. How was the session? It was great. Thank you. Great. And then the last session, he said, I don't feel like I really got a lot of value out of the sessions that we did, and I'd like a refund. And I was a little shocked at the time because I thought, okay, I offer a 3-session money back guarantee, and I ask at the 3rd session, how are we going? Are you getting a lot of value out? Yes, I'm getting a lot of value out of it. So they've agreed, and we continue. And so then it's like, okay, so you're telling me on the very last session that you haven't got value out of it. Really what he was saying was he didn't really want to do the very thing he set out to do anymore, and he made a realization for that. And so, but that wasn't what he paid. He paid me because he wanted to start this new business. But as we worked and went along, he realized it actually wasn't what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
But he didn't know what the next thing was. And so I was like, okay. Then I said, look, let me think about it, and then I'll write an email to you. So I sat and I processed it. I thought, okay, what do I want? Like, what's the type of business that I want to run, and what's the experience that I had from working with them? So I went back and reflected on the original sales call that I had with them, because I do a discovery call, and that's because I want to check in. How do I feel with them, and how do they feel with me, and like, can we work together? And I was definitely, yeah, we could. Was it outside of what I normally do? I was like, well, not really. Had I worked with the individual before? No. Or did I know them? I had known of them. So I was kind of working, okay, so what happened? And then I reflect, because I take notes. I use Notion, and I take notes in all of my sessions. I'm a bit of a geek. And so I've got them all filed with all the type of what we worked on, and the topic, and then the aha moments and realization. So I'm going through all of this information. I'm like, what did I miss? And then I realized, like, that's okay. Like, I'm just refund him the entire package back. And I was like, okay, is that what I want to do? And I was like, actually, that's what I want to do. I'm going to do something really brave and bold, and not something that I would normally do. Well, actually, I wouldn't say I would normally do it, because I've never had it before. So first time. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to refund him. Why? Because if he really genuinely felt like he didn't, after 12 or 11 sessions, that he didn't feel like he got any value out of that, well, then I don't want him to pay. Because the type of coach I want to be is, I want to feel like I changed your life. I want to feel like this has been the money that you have invested in you, that has completely been that sliding door moment where it's shifted and it's changed, and you love your life, and you have more awareness than you've ever had before. You've got a foundation of psychology and mindset that you can't take away. Like, no one can take that away from you. It's like, I want that, and I want that to make a difference in someone's life. And if someone turns around and says that wasn't it for me, okay, well, no problem. So I'd rather, and so he's actually referred quite a few people since then, because just, I think, shocked. Like, I don't know many people who would do that. They'd go, okay, well, you didn't get value out of it, but you paid, so bad luck. But I just definitely learned that maybe I had to be wiser at dealing with people's expectation of what they had as an outcome. So, for example, I had a client come to me, and he said, so he was a paraplegic, and he said, Tanya, I've heard that the Demartini method helps people to heal their bodies. I am a paraplegic, and I'd like to walk again. Can you help me walk? And I'm like, I said, okay, knowing I have to be more wiser at how do I manage people's expectation. I had said to him, look, what I can help you with, I don't know if I can help you walk again. There are actually, because there are actually machines that people can go on these days, and actually stimulates the body, which stimulates the brain, and they can build the neural pathways back again, and they can walk. And so I'm like, I don't know if I can help you physically walk again, but I can definitely help you to create some movement back in your life again. Would that be okay? And he's like, yes. Like, okay. And so each time I'd say, okay, so how are we going? I know this is what you wanted, but this is what you were getting. Are you okay with that? And he's like, yes. And so I was helping manage the expectation that he had, because I definitely couldn't do that. That's not something I could do. I definitely don't have that skills. But it definitely was something that I took away from that original client, was like, how do I, because that's essentially what people have is, and especially why some people spend a lot of money, whether it be in coaching or whatever it is, and then they feel let down. But it's because their expectation they had on what the outcome was going to be, and not actually appreciating what outcome they did get. And so that, I think that's our job as a coach, is to make sure that we're checking in and managing their expectations.
Yeah. I love the three, at the end of the third session, we can ask you a refund. Is it okay? Yes. I love that.
Yeah.
Have you ever had people that have asked you refund after the first three sessions?
I mean, I've done a lot of sessions. Yeah, I've done a lot of sessions, and off the top of my head, I've refunded 2 people. One person didn't pay, and then so I've had one person not pay, and then they messaged me maybe like 18 months later. And I said, well, you didn't pay last time. And they said, oh, I'm so sorry, I went bankrupt and I had to, get myself back on my feet again, and no problem. So they paid for that session and the one or those sessions and the one that they were about to have. But I've refunded. So one particular individual was the most recent one that I had. They were a referral from one of my current clients. And they are a big speaker in their field and very known in their field. And they were going through a relationship breakup. And I'm like a vault with clients. So I obviously work with coaches and I help them grow their coaching business. And then I have my private clients. And so a lot of people don't even know who my private clients are because I don't normally talk about them. And so what happens is, so she came and we started to do some of the work, but what she realized was, and she even said it, was that I feel like the work that you do, it's too advanced, is what she just felt like she wasn't ready to let go of her story and her emotional child. Like she's getting too much out of staying the way that she was. And especially because, she just felt like it was not the best time for her to do it right now. And so I think that was the second session though. So we didn't do 3. But I've always felt like that, because to have a 3-session money back routine, done it from the very beginning, because I feel like some people are coming and I've built my business on referrals. And so, they're investing, for some people, it's a lot of money into coaching. And so if they then have that freedom and flexibility, well, there's no harm. I can just give it a go. And I know that if I can sit down with someone, I can make a profound difference to their life. And so if I can just get them in the room with me, in the Zoom room, and then we work together, I know that by the 3rd session, a lot has shifted by then. And so I normally don't have an issue. And then it helps them feel more settled in it. They've signed a contract, so it's an agreement, and they get the money back if they wanted it. But very few people have asked.
I love that, because sometimes I know I could help more people, but sometimes I'm not committing to helping someone because I'm not 100% certain that I can help. Maybe I'm 80% certain. I have 80% of certitude, but not 100. And it is a guarantee for you and for the clients. It's for both.
Yeah, but I feel like one of the secret sources that I have is it's not necessarily even about having certainty that you can heal them. It can be just about having a love to serve and be present with someone and just be there with them and just help them and give them a lot of heart and presence. And that is healing in itself. So, because we think that we're so attached sometimes with that, I've got to go do it. So we've kind of we're taking credit and we're taking blame. Oh, I did it, I didn't do it. And so when we live through that experience, when we're a coach, we can have this huge roller coaster ride of emotion, because then we're pride because, oh my gosh, look at all this work that I did. And then shame because it's oh my gosh, I was really struggling and I didn't, deliver. And so we're very much oscillating with the outside world about how we feel about ourselves as a coach, as opposed to going, well, what happens if it was just purely about just being present with a client and just having a love to serve them and wanting the intention to heal. I think that's important because I know personally, I tell this story very often. I remember paying $3,600 for 1 hour coaching session. Okay, that's Australian dollars, but it's a bit of money, and so essentially, I go and pay for this session, and I go and spend my hour with the coach, and then I leave, and I'm like, I got nothing out of that. And I was like, what? Oh, that was just such a waste of money. And so I then just went about my day, my week, my month, and I'm often in the shower, and I call them my shower of power. And there I am, I'm washing my hair and I'm doing my thinking, and I'm thinking about some of the dynamics and things that are happening in my life, my shower of power. And then all of a sudden I'm just like, I just cry and cry and cry and cry. And I just had this like huge realization. And I was like, oh my God, I now get what he said to me. I get it. So it's like the penny dropped. It just took a long way from the top of the sky to drop before I actually heard, I was like, oh my God, I get it now. It took a couple of months before I was finally like, now I'm grateful. I was like, that was $3,600, worth it. And so sometimes we get so attached. I've got to give and deliver the outcome in the hour that I have, but we forget the brain is an amazing phenomena that it's processing all the time. And so the very things that you drop in, it might be seeding for them, or it might drop in and an awareness and a realization happens months later, or maybe even years later.
Yeah.
And so it's in those moments that actually the work worked for you. But so that's why we don't want to be so attached to, well, it has to be in the hour, and also that we do it. It's just that we do what we feel that, is best and wise for the client in the moment. We do our very best. And then at the very end, it's like up to them to, when they're ready to hear it or for it to land.
Yeah. There is something that you told me that I really hear 2 years after.
Did you?
Yeah.
What was that?
And it was the part where I've asked you at Sydney. I've asked you, what do you think what do you see about myself that I don't see about me? And you said maybe attachment and relationship. And at the time I was like, not agree. And 2 years ago, 2 years after, I was like, attachment and relationship. Okay, I got it.
Okay.
And I have something. Yeah, I have something on my phone about what you said. Yeah, which is I've recorded this message. I don't know if we see that.
I remember when we were talking. Yes. Yep.
Focus on service. Yeah, it's to stay focused on the service and be present. Yeah, and after I think about managing our emotion as a coach, and like you said, it's praise and maybe as a coach we need to work more on the praising side and the pride side than the shame side.
Well, for sure, because when we attach to the pride of the work that we do as a coach, then we also have to appreciate that anytime we get pride, we're also going to attract criticism and judgment from the outside to humble us, because there's 4 ecosystems that will help to bring us back into balance. We have 2 internal and 2 external. So the 2 internal are your intuition and your physical body will help you to try to balance you out and kind of bring that pride back down again to bring it back more into equilibrium. And then the other is our social circle, and then just random things happen. And so when we have the outside world reflecting maybe more criticism or challenge from the outside world, it's a great reflection of the pride that we have. I also believe that, and maybe you can relate to this, or maybe people listening can also relate to this, but there's an element when you're really in the zone with coaching that for me it feels like it's like something is working through me. It's not me. It's like that it's like, maybe that's just the best way to describe it. It's just, I feel like I'm not attached. So I feel like it's like I become like a vessel for something, and I feel like that's the best way to describe it, where I don't feel like it's me and I'm attached to it. It's my result and it's the work that I do and the information I have. Because in the moment I told you about relationship, I mean, you were very much into business and so but that was what it felt like at that particular time, like working through. So I think sometimes when we get attached to it, that's where when we get attached to the results that we deliver for people, we can get blinded by the pride that we have. And then we're not actually truly being able to serve our clients to the best of our ability, because we're focused on ourselves rather than what we can do for someone, rather than serving them.
Yeah. It made me thinking about a lot of coaches that I can see share a lot of testimonials or something, or some messages from their clients after a session on Instagram, and they're like, "Oh, this is amazing! My clients has these results," and maybe it can be great for the external world and to bring more clients because you're sharing testimonials. But I can feel like there is a pride side, and in the internal world, it's not so amazing, and you're paying the price at a time.
You can, we can feel, because we're, feelings and energy doesn't lie. The body doesn't lie. We can speak words and we're like, that doesn't feel right, because energy doesn't lie. So if someone, it's great marketing and you can definitely do that, and who knows what their inner world is like. But if we definitely view something, we're like, oh, there's a lot of pride in that, we could be picking up on what they're currently going through. And the more pride we have that we try to display a particular way on the outside, kind of markets an image on the outside, the more we're actually beating ourselves down, because not getting sales, not getting clients, not getting the type of clients we want. Actually, the next person that you work with, the next individual we work with, they're like, I didn't even get a result. I want a longer session, or I want a refund. And so then you get that kind of humbling afterwards because you're puffed up with pride, or you get that internal criticism because you're puffed up with pride. And so we have to learn how to manage that. One of the things that I'm definitely really tuned into with people is that people are very aware of when they beat themselves down. They're very aware of, I'm depressed, down, I'm
but
feeling not the pride. You tell me, like, how do you feel when you're prideful? People are like, I don't know, like, I don't know. And so, but you can tell me when you're depressed. Definitely, like, I don't want to get out of bed. I want to eat more, eat less. I don't want to communicate with anyone. I feel sad. I just feel malaise to life. And so, but then with pride, it's like, well, how do you know? And it's a great question to ask yourself, like, how would you know? Do you post more frequently on social media? Do you speak? Because we tend to speak when we're infatuated with something. We have a higher tone. Like, I listen to people. I used to love doing coaching sessions just purely on phone, old school, because I've been doing it for so long. I've gone through phone and Skype and, now Zoom. And so what's really interesting is you can just hear someone and just their tone and know whether they're up or down just by their tone alone. And so one thing we want to become more tuned into and aware of, like, what are our markers that will show us that we're actually in pride or experiencing feeling grander than we normally are. And so, and it might be in that you feel like your mind is racing, a lot faster than it usually does. You speak faster, because we tend to be slow and drawn out when we're depressed, and much faster when we're elated or in pride. And so you just want to know, we become extroverted sometimes when you tend to be in pride, and more quiet and reserved when you're in shame and you want to hide away versus show. So it's like the hiding and showing side. And so everyone's going to be different, though, because everyone will do pride slightly different. And so you just want to, maybe some people can be helpful to go through those moments where they felt like more invincible or prideful of and grandizing about what they're doing, and noticing, well, what behavior did I display in those moments? And then know, hang on, right now I'm definitely feeling it, because then we can balance our inner world and bring our inner world down so the outer world doesn't have to do it for us.
Yeah. I have a lot of questions to ask you about the Demartini method and your experience on that. And my first question is, what have you understood about the Demartini method that you perceive that a lot of people that are in this world have not understood?
That it's a deeply mystical experience. So a lot of people come in, actually I'd say 99.9% of people come in and apply this work and realize that it's very heady, it's very intellectual, and it's a lot of it is in my mind and having to think. And so it feels very analysis orientated. But the first time I ever did the breakthrough experience, and I was in the room with Dr. Demartini, and there's 210 people, and you're asked to select an individual that you want to work on. And I was like, I want to work on my first boyfriend that I had, when I was 18. And the facilitator said, no, don't do that. So I was like, okay. He goes, you should do your mum. And I was like, okay, because at that time I was following more of a follower. And so I did my mum. And then on the Saturday evening, Dr. Demartini stops us and says, okay, now I want everyone to look around the room, and I want you to find the individual that you've been working on. And at that moment, two in front of me, he turned around and he looked at me, and he was a splitting image of my first boyfriend. And I was like, what? So I was like, this is crazy. And then, so I was like, okay. And then I ended up choosing, I had to find someone in the room that looked like, that looked like my mom. I couldn't find a single woman in the room that looked like my mom. And then there was this lady who was at the back of the room, and she was with her son, and she put her hand up at one point during the Saturday and said, I'm here with my son and I've got a question. So I was like, she'll do, because she's a mom. And so I was like, so I sat down with her and we did this exchange. I thanked her for the experience that I'd had, and we had this beautiful dialogue. And at that moment, we had this really beautiful, deep connection. And she's actually still my surrogate mum in Sydney today. So I feel like deeply appreciative that I had this, beautiful relationship with my my new mum, and I'm very grateful to her. So then it comes to the Sunday, and then that Sunday we're doing this grief process, and I'm being asked these questions from Dr. Demartini to dissolve my grief. Then he asks me, look in the audience and find someone that resembles or looks like your boyfriend. And I was like, okay, I'm going to choose this person. He came and sat down, and I swear it was him. He had the exact same eye color that my boyfriend had, and I could not stop looking at him, at his eyes. Like, if I nothing else, but if I just like screenshotted his eyes, I'd be like exactly the same color. It was kind of like this greeny bluey color. I was like, whoa, that is just crazy. And so what I realized was, because doing the method over and over again, and then being able to appreciate that it's a deeply spiritual experience, and being able to have healings with people, that especially when you do that, the surrogate experience at the very end, when you select someone and you do an exchange, it's so profound. Like, there was one particular moment where a lady, and she's like, can I speak? And I was facilitating the experience, And the lady said, can I speak in Spanish? And so there's a man and he'd been selected, and she's like, can I speak in Spanish? And I said, sure, go ahead. You speak in whatever language you feel. And she said, and she starts speaking. I don't speak Spanish either. So I'm just listening in. I'm just holding a space for them to have this dialogue after she's finished her process. And then he says, and then I say to him, what would you love to share with this your friend? And because it was a friend dynamic. And he said, I'm so sorry. I should never have done that to you. I should never have touched you. I should never have done that. And I have thought about this for my entire life. And I'm so sorry. And she's just gone pale. And she's like, how did you know? And he's like, know what? and so of all the people that she could have selected, and she had a sexual experience that she didn't want to have, and he had a sexual experience that the other person didn't want to have at the same age, and they've sat down together and they're having a dialogue in another language that he didn't even know what she was saying. And then they're having the Demartini method is a deeply spiritual experience, And I feel like when people, this is what I love about our maximum growth classes, like bringing that really into the work that we do. It is a deeply spiritual experience and mystical to have that experience where you are just goosebumps from head to toe. The whole room is like welling up and crying because it's just like, whoa, that is so beautiful. Your heart feels like it almost wants to like burst out of your chest because it feels so open. It's something that you can't get anywhere else. Like you can't. And so especially when you've done all of that work and to choose the individual, like, and to have the same dynamic and the same experience just from the inverse. And then that he got to heal from the work that she did. He didn't even do the work, but he's like changed his life from that. He dissolved his grief because she's like, I'm so thankful and I'm so grateful. And he now feels healed from that dynamic of the shame and the guilt that he had been hanging on to. So I just feel like that is definitely something that I'm definitely well aware of with the Demartini method, and why I personally love it so much.
What have you learned about the distinction that allow to go to this level? Because what's the difference between what do you perceive that is the difference between someone who is practicing with maybe staying in his head and doesn't go anywhere with the method, and someone that touched this mystical experience, maybe in your own life or maybe with your clients?
Well, I think some people do the work sometimes, or just do mindset work sometimes to actually avoid feelings. And so then that's because you have to ask, why do people stay stuck in their head? Why do they not want to feel in their body? And so if they are applying the Demartini method, or they're a coach, or they're doing the work on their own and they're in their head, why do they want to be there? Because it's not our natural, we're feeling and thinking beings. And so why do we want to stay there? Is it out of protection? Is it out of fear of, something that came up in the session I had today was around, well, I'm afraid to feel, because it's like actually feeling meant being weak. Feeling is very vulnerable. What happens if I start feeling and I don't know how to stop? And so, because we can be preconditioned to believe that it's not okay to feel, or our culture shows that it's not okay to feel. And so they could be asking the question, first of all, why do you not want to go down there? And look, not everyone is spiritual, so not everyone is also going to have a value on having that connection to the work. Some people just love the intellectualizing or the dialogue that they have around a particular issue and the conversation that they have around a particular issue, but are okay to extract meaning out of it, but don't necessarily want the mystical side because their values don't line up for it. So I think everyone is different into why, but I would question if you get stuck in the analysis paralysis dynamic and you just keep on analyzing it. I would ask, what are you most afraid of, and like going deeper and actually making it a thinking and feeling experience. Yeah, because it's definitely one of the things I learned in if I go back to the 2015-16 dynamic, and I was finding myself, I realized that it's our ability to think and feel through this method that makes it profound. If we stay in our head, we're almost it's almost like every random, because we're trying to find the benefit of something that we're emotionally charged about, and we're trying to stay in our head, even though we feel the resentment and the charge in our body. We're trying to, intellectualize it and rationalize or do something in our head, and we're just waiting for one of those moments to drop and land and hope one of them will. As opposed to every single answer that we give, we fully make sure that we sit in it, we embody it, we connect with it and like certain of it, and then go to the next one and then next one. So it's a body-mind experience, every response that you give. And so that way it feels much more integrated as a dynamic between head and body to be able to open the heart, as opposed to just head, and hope one one's going to shift you.
Okay, so there's two advice. The first one is to identify the fear that is behind the fact of not feeling it, and the second one which is to really be present when you do the work and take your time, be present, feel every answer.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's because I believe it's the quality of our life is determined by the quality of questions we ask and the quality of answers that we provide. And so we want to ask quality questions, which is the most quality of question that we can ask for this particular issue or challenge that we're having, and then making sure we give quality answers. There's no point asking an amazing question and then we just give answers that are maybe on the surface level of a response. It's actually making sure that we're actually meaningful answers that we're giving.
And what have you learned or understand about the Demartini method that you wasn't understand maybe 3 years ago or 4 years ago?
Oh my gosh. That's a great question. I've learned so much because 4 years ago, I everyone knows what happened 4 years ago. And so I've been taking and facilitating people through the Demartini method each and every week for now going on to 4 in the beginning of April with 4 years. And so that's 2 classes a week of the Demartini method each week of the entire year for 4 years in a row. So I've definitely learned a lot along the way, because when you deep dive in, because we deep dive into 2 columns each week and do that class twice, I feel like from a group perspective, they've shared different dynamics that I've definitely learned as a facilitator and as a coach, and then also just the refinement of the Demartini method. I think one of the things that I've definitely learned the most has been just making sure that we're getting present in our moment, and we're defining our direction of expression, or what we call the scientific is like the vector, or where is the charge being directed towards, and also the context, because that is actually important throughout the entire process. Because if we're going to go and own it, and we don't own it in the same relationship dynamic, let's say, for example, you're really emotionally charged with an employee or a co-worker, or let's say a co-worker, and you perceive them to be critical of you, and you're like, I'm really charged with that. Okay, great. And then you go, okay, where have you been critical? And you find I was critical towards my parents and my family and my blah, blah, and all these people, but you don't find it in that same direction of expression, the same relationship. Then you'll still feel like, yeah, but they do it publicly to everyone. And so there's still a separation between how they do it and you do it. So direction is really important. Direction is also important then when we go to find, well, what's the benefit? If you just find the benefit and the direction of expression is them to you, but you don't find what's the benefit because it was done in a public space, for example, then you're still going to be charged about it. So the direction of expression and kind of that relationship is very important. We also want to know what the context is. And so the context helps us, because if someone's critical of your clothes versus critical of what you say, the context is really important, because maybe you don't really care about what you're wearing, but you care about what the context of being critical of what you say. Therefore, when you go to own it, you've got to find out, well, where have you been critical of someone with what they say? Because if you go find criticism, but they kind of deserved it, and then you justify all the reasons why you were critical, still not the same. And so I've just found those two components, when we set that up from the very beginning of when we start processing it, that's definitely really important and beneficial for the process of it. So that's kind of on a technical point of view, which some people are like, well, there's a bit too much. The other is the body mind connection. Is definitely, it's a felt experience. So definitely what I was explaining before, just about connecting in with your body while doing the process. Kind of some people do breath work, which can be really helpful. I also find movement helps massively sometimes with actually processing and doing the work. I've got actually a couple of clients that I do phone sessions with, and we do the work and we walk at the same time. So they're on there doing their walk around their suburb, and I'm doing my walk around my suburb. And what happens is, when we move our body, or we connect in with our body and we do the process, one, it's so much more fun, and it's less like sitting down and doing your homework and your schoolwork, trying to fit into the boxes and trying to fit it all in, and feel kind of closed in, because some people just don't do well with, because it's a form that they're trying to fill out. And some people they're more arty, or they just like to go outside the boxes, and this is not for them to sit down. I'm the daughter of a teacher. So I'm very diligent, and I love, dotting my I's and crossing my T's and kind of fitting into boxes and, ticking things off. That's definitely me. And so I love the Demartini form, but I understand not everyone does. And so I think that's one of the things that I really encourage people to do, is just because it goes in this form doesn't mean you have to do it in the form. If you feel like you want to go mind map it, go mind map it. If you want to write it and journal it out, if you just want to speak it out, then go do that. Do it and figure out in a way that you feel like is great for your processing of your mind and your emotion. And then if there's a way that you can make it a body-mind experience, super profound. So that's definitely what I've learned over the last 4 years.
What are the most creative way that you have seen your clients do to practice the method?
I just someone just recently did a mind map. So they started with the emotional charge in the beginning, and then started mind mapping it all out. And I was like, actually, that's pretty creative. I like it. I can't say I've done one like that. Just I still love the form. But yeah, I could definitely see that a lot of people could get a lot of value out of doing it that particular, especially when they like to bring in lots of colors and make it look pretty.
Yeah. Value is also a big part of your work and the work of Dr. John Demartini. What have you learned about value the last 5 years that you didn't knew, or you wasn't understand at this level?
So a couple of things. One is, I have a daughter now. She's about to turn 5 next month, and so I've definitely learned
5.
a lot.
Wow.
Yeah,
She has grown a lot.
Yes, I've definitely learned a lot. One, through my transition and being a mum, because I was a little bit older, having my daughter. And so going from being very concentrated in business and then having a young one, definitely, there's a value shift that happens, and it's been definitely gradual in terms of kind of shifting and blending and figuring out, because it was a new identity essentially, and kind of figuring out where do my values lie. But what was really interesting was that watching her grow up and watching her learn and develop and have leaps and bounds in her growth, and then linking that to human behavior and watching this like evolution of a little being coming into the world and living their life has been so amazing. Like, I've learned so much about values, because if people say that the 2-year-old child is going to go through tantrums and they're going to be, so challenged, we actually didn't have that with her, because it's just about values. You've got to know what your child wants and is important to. And so we just artfully knew how to communicate with her to get her to feel like she was about to do something she wanted to do. And even sometimes when she didn't want to do something, it was like, okay, this is just a statement. She's not driven to do it anymore. How can we either create it to be an environment or be okay with the fact that she just doesn't want to do it? And so we definitely I feel like I became way more flexible, kind of an understanding of values just by watching and seeing her grow up. And then also in terms of values, so there's that component. So, and I feel like, and it's all those decisions, like every values is all about us continually making decisions in our life. Like right now, it's more important for me to do this than it is to do that. So you wake up in the morning, you say, okay, I'm going to go and exercise and train. And then, well, it's more important, it's a higher value to exercise than it is to spend time with your kids. Then you go and spend time with your kids instead of going and working. Okay, in that moment, it's more important to spend time with the kids, more valuable for you to spend time with your kids than it is to work. Then you have a choice after you drop the kids off to school, then you make a decision, okay, what's more important? Okay, it's more important for me to go work than it is to do anything else. And so throughout your day, whatever decision, whatever action you're taking has been bred from a decision in that point that you've perceived that to be more valuable than doing something else. And so when we see our life like that, it's this beautiful unfoldment in your day of what is actually valuable and what is not, what you're prioritizing as more important and what you're not. So then you kind of left questioning, well, if you want to have a more bigger business, or you want to do more learning, or you want to master your craft more, you just have to make different decisions. That decision point is where that, and then you take a different action, you'll have different values, and then the result of that is you'll get a different life. So I've definitely learned that. And the other is voids. Definitely huge realization has been that so much emphasis is spent on what is your values, but your void is what actually drives your value in the first place. So most people want to know, well, what am I prioritizing? What's important now? Maybe it's business, money, clients, health and well-being, travel, whatever that is, personal development. And so that's your value. That's what you're seeing as important. But why is it important? Like, what actually drove that to be important in the first place? And so most people haven't ever questioned, where did that value even come from? Like, what were the accumulation of experiences that you had from childhood until now that actually birthed that, or continued to birth, or continued to grow that value of yours? It's like, where did that come from? So I go back and I think about, because I've got a very high value on like personal development, human behavior, facilitating. Like, it's just like I'm very concentrated in that. And when I asked that question, like, where did that come from? Like, where was the void that I perceived? And so my dad was, in my early years, an alcoholic, and he went to AA, and he did rehab first, and then he went to AA, and then he'd come home, and he would do these like mini seminars with my brother and I on AA. And so there were, one particular time where he had me laying on the ground, and he was doing this like relaxation, shift, like to help me with something that was happening at school. And so there I am, kind of, he's helping me kind of talk me through it. So I'm getting to feel this shift and change. He also changed a lot. So I had this void of my dad not really being that present in my early years because he was drunk or drinking, and then him being very present, and he did some personal development to get there. And so I was like, whoa, you can completely change your life by doing personal development, which is like this eye-opening experience. Yes, it was AA, but still it made a difference to my life. It changed my life because I had my dad. And so, which was beautiful. And so that was a void in a way that drove me to want to understand human behavior. Then my parents had separated when I was young. I was 4, and because I went to a primary school, or the beginning of school, and it was my first year. And because I came from divorced parents, which was, in the 80s, not as common as it is now, we got sent to a program called the Rainbow Kids. And the Rainbow Kids is this program where you would talk about all the challenging things that happened as a child coming from divorced parents. And so I was like, there's another void of like kind of feeling like there's something wrong with you and something not okay with you, and you need to be worked on. And so I was like, a number of these kind of moments that build up to be these voids that then lead me to want to understand human behavior. Kind of almost like if you imagine that your life is like a puzzle and it's been broken into a million different pieces, and you're just picking up these pieces and you put it together and you're like, oh, now I get it. Oh my gosh, now I get it. Because there's that void that drives, and you kind of wanting, because I wanted to understand human behavior, like why would my dad be like that? And then what did he do to change his life? And I want to kind of understand that journey. And then if I'm being told I'm broken, then I've gone on this journey of like the void of wanting to understand myself and the world. And of course then why I love the Demartini method is because it's deeply rich in this ultimate perfection that it has an implicate order, and nothing is out of order, that there's a perfection to that. And so my childhood pain or void gets filled with my current value of facilitating and helping other people to find deeper meaning and know that everything is beautiful and perfect as it is. And so the void actually drives the value. So if people actually start to ask that question, like what was actually driving the very thing that's important for them right now, whether it be finances, like where did that come from? If it means wanting to help and heal people, where did that come? Where did that drive and desire or that void come from?
Yeah. When I'm hearing you, I feel like value is just a strategy to fulfill the void. And
it is.
If you want to change your life, you can find a different strategy, but you can work on the void.
Yeah. If there's a void you don't want anymore and you don't want that to drive you anymore, you could do lots of work. But I do believe, though, that there are some voids that just feel so deep that no matter how much, like I have a high value on health and movement in the body. And so I go back and I think, okay, so because my dad was sick a lot when I was growing up. I had a couple of illnesses, but nothing major. But it's like no matter how much work I've done on that, I still have a value on health and well-being, and so it's like that. I feel like there comes to a point where you can do so much work on your voids, and you do dissolve the emotional charge out of it, but it still drives you. There's still something inside of you that still wants to find it meaningful and important. You still find it meaningful and important. You still want to apply it or invest time, money, and energy in it every day, week, month, or year.
Yeah, it was my next question. Do you believe there is like an innate void, a void that you will have because it's part of your design, and it was written somewhere that you will be born with this void, or
Are we going into like free will versus destiny? Is this is it predetermined? We're going deep now. I believe there's an element of a soul's calling. I believe that there are like people do have something here to offer, work through in their life, and everyone has something different. And some people can turn a deaf ear to it and not want to hear it and acknowledge it. And some people go, okay, this is my journey and my path. This is what I'm here to do. But I wouldn't necessarily say that, everyone will know it by the age of 20 or by the age of 30 or 40. Like, you know, sometimes people just, like, for whatever reason, they have to go through their trial by fire, and that might be into their 40s, 50s and 60s, and they might just have to go through a few, but there isn't a race to find it by a particular age. You know, there isn't a point that you have to, it's success when you've worked it out what it is and working towards it. It's just sometimes we've kind of got to sit ourselves in the challenge and the discomfort for a little bit more before we're either ready to hear it, or also because if we have a look at the entanglement, that when we're doing something that feels like a soul's calling and we're going out there and we're delivering it and we're sharing that message out there to the world, well, the world also has to be ready to hear it too. It's a co-creation or you know, you're co-faceting with each other, like you're actually kind of merging it together. And so then to think that it's just you going out there and doing something, maybe it's also the world has to also be ready to hear and the message that you have to deliver, or the service that you have to deliver. And so I think it's like an element of both. So I don't think if people should beat themselves down, it's like, well, I don't know what that is yet. It's just maybe just not quite ready to hear it, or just it's not the time for now. It also doesn't make your life better, because I think sometimes people think, well, I want to know what it is. I want to know what my soul calling is, and then my life would be so much better. But actually, it's a lot of responsibility, and it's a lot of pressure, and it's a lot of time and energy and effort that goes into then actually having to go do that calling that you feel like you have. So, and you can't gain something without losing something.
Personally, I have this fantasy that it's better. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I prefer to feel inspired and to have a clear goal that really inspired me, and than not knowing what to do with my life.
Well, for sure, but I still remember seeing James Cameron, the writer. So I still remember seeing him at the Sydney Writing Festival a few years ago, and he's in Sydney Town Hall, and there's like, you know, I don't know, 500 people in the room, and he does this Q&A at the very end, and this young girl gets up and she's at the microphone. She's maybe 12 or 13, and she goes, I've got, you know, a budding writer, like, what's the best bit of advice that you have for me? And he said, write every day. One of the things people they wait for that bit of inspiration to drop. And then it's like, oh, okay, now I'm going to go and do it. And it's like, whoa, if we waited for that, we probably have very few books here in the world, because people wouldn't be dedicated to writing. They would be dedicated to waiting for something just to drop through, and then they go and do their mission and their service. But what happens if it just meant showing up every day? And then some days it's going to be feeling like, which is what he said, some days it feels like he does 4 hours a day. He said, some days I do 4 hours and it's terrible, and I throw everything out and I don't use any of it. And sometimes it might be a paragraph, and sometimes it might be the entire thing. And so we almost like, it's like that showing up, and then allowing, you know, that, and then not being addicted to the inspiration, because sometimes we can get really attached to that inspiration, kind of that energy that runs through us. And sometimes we just have to also embrace that. Because if we also look at the amount of times we're actually inspired in our entire life, it's actually very few. We can have like sprinkles and spurts of inspiration, but we don't, like, to have a fantasy that we have to be that way all the time, you know, and every time that we show up for work, it's a lot of pressure to put on yourself.
Yeah, it depends on what do you put into this world, being inspired, because I can feel like I'm like maybe feel like 2 to 3 hours like this per day, but it depends on your definition of being inspired.
And what's your definition of being inspired?
I would say it's a difficult question. doing for me it's like being in the flow, so it's doing something and being immersed in what you're doing. Yeah, not wanting
like
to be
losing a sense of time.
Yeah, losing a sense of time and being happy to do what you do. When I'm saying happy is the question is difficult because I'm forced to think about times when I can describe myself as inspired, but yes, like I'm doing the most important things. I know this is the most important things, and I'm not thinking about doing something else. I'm fully engaged in that.
And
Have
so
you
that's beautiful.
another
Yeah.
have you another definition?
Yeah, like that. No, that I would say it's same or pretty similar, and then it's a feeling. It's definitely a feeling that runs through me, like a bodily feeling that comes through me, that I feel like if I could imagine and I picture all the atoms in my body, they would be all vibrating like be all happy. That's describe it. Yeah. Yeah. And I just noticed that I need less sleep. I eat less.
Yeah.
I just but I'm also, because I go in a zone, and I don't know if you're in the same as well, but I kind of go into almost like a one-track mind. I can't think about anything else but that, and it's just like zone, which is, I guess, how I became, say, master certified in the Demartini method, because I'm like, that's what I want, and it's like zone and then go after it. And so it's like once I kind of hit that, it's kind of like, you know, that's my one track focus, and then I do everything that I like. Everything kind of works towards that one thing. But it's definitely a feeling and a sensation that happens within me. Yeah.
How long can you stay in this feeling?
If I look at my track, it ebbs and flows. So, I mean, I can do it from weeks to hours. And like last night, I was up until midnight last night working. And then I've been working again up until literally a minute before I came on this podcast with you, and working on a particular project at the moment because we're delivering it on the 1st of April. And so I'm pretty certain that for the next number of days that we have left, I'll be pretty focused when I don't have anything else to do. If I don't have time with my daughter, or if I'm not exercising, or if I'm not seeing a client, that's what I'll be doing. And so, but I feel like there's a time. I've got a time limit to it.
Yeah.
But if I didn't have a time limit to it, it could be days or weeks, and then I'll probably need to have a little bit of if I go back, if I even look at, so I went into a zone in November this last year, and I just came out a couple of weeks ago, and now I'm back in again. So I would say I can do it for extended periods of time. Yeah.
I think constraint and time limit is really important to go into this zone. Putting constraint on yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, because now you almost put yourself into a container of like, okay, there's an outcome and there's a reason and a deliverable that you have to now do.
And do you need a commitment to the outside world to go into the zone? Because when I'm hearing what you're saying, I hear time limit, I hear clear goals, really, really clear and defined goals, and commitment to someone else.
Well, I'm like a coach through and through. I love facilitating, love serving and human behavior. And I definitely do it to be able to serve other people. So, and I know that if I'm like, at the moment, I'm creating content. And so because I think about the individual sitting in front of me, and I think about that individual who's going to listen and watch and participate in the work what I'm doing, I think about them. And so I feel like it's as if I'm sitting in a one-on-one session with someone and I'm just typing and writing or speaking and delivering it to them and, molding and creating this into being what I feel like would be really helpful for them. So having the outside, that idea of someone else sitting there and experiencing it and thinking about them in the journey definitely helps. Is it the only thing? It's definitely not the only thing. I'm definitely inspired by it. But it puts it into context of why I'm doing it in the first place, which is what gives me my inspiration when I think about the people that I'm making a difference to.
Do you have a particular client in mind, or is it more abstract?
It changes. But I do. Yeah, it changes. So I think of a particular client each time I create a bit of content or I create a course. I think about one particular individual and I just speak to them. And so, because I feel like I can connect in, like I feel like energetically I can connect in, and because I'm connecting with them and I'm talking to them, everyone's like, oh, that's me too. And so it happens just, I guess, by default or byproduct of it. So yeah, I definitely can. I do my best to, and sometimes it might be multiple people, but they've all got the kind of same or similar dynamic that they're working through.
Yeah. There is a last subject that I want to talk about with you. 1 year ago, you partner with Justin. It's 1 year ago.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
In February a year ago. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What was your fear between being partnered? Between becoming partner? Yeah.
I definitely didn't have a very big fear. I had a bigger fear because I was at that point where I've got my private coaching. I started group coaching 3 years before that. I have a daughter. She was 1 at the time, also a single mom, so having to kind of navigate that dynamic. And I felt like COVID for me and that period of time for me was very much about, there was a lot of kind of spending a lot of time on my own. And so if I wasn't with my daughter and, kind of beavering away, doing all the work behind the scenes to be able to grow a group coaching business on my own. And I just got to that point where I actually didn't want to do that journey on my own anymore. Like I wanted to join in with someone and collaborate together and create something. And so I felt like, I could have.
Why? It was because of time? It was because of some responsibility that you don't want to have, or just for... Why did
it was definitely a time thing because it was definitely a time thing because I don't have, like, in amongst my private coaching and then also the group coaching, so having to then I felt like internally I felt like I had a lot of courses in me. Like people say I've got a lot of books in me. I felt like I've got a lot of courses. I've got a lot of information that I feel like overfilling and I want to overflowing and want to start sharing with people. And so I just felt like if I kept on going how I was going, it was very much more focused on a lot of the getting people in and all the kind of sales, marketing and doing all of that part. And I felt like, but my geniusness and my zone of where I'm going to be the best at is creating space for me to actually create content and deliver the information to people and to work with people. That's where my genius lies. And I felt like I having to do a little bit of that, but then all the business building and then, the decisions and it just time was I was kind of like very limited with what I had to do. And it was I felt like at the end of the day, I was doing a half job. Like it was okay, but it was just good, and it was not to the level and standard I wanted to. So I felt like that decision point that I had, like if I brought someone on and have them be accountable as well and bring them in, how would that be? And so when I thought about people in my community, Justin was definitely the person that I felt like I'd resonate with the most. We have completely same values. We just express them differently. And so there's a beautiful synergy between the two of us. And so I hadn't really had, I think my greatest fear was, well, what happens if it doesn't work out? Like what happens if it doesn't work out? But I feel like we are putting 110% into making it work. Like I genuinely feel like I have something unique and different to offer the world, and some messages to share, and some ways to kind of profoundly impact humanity. And so I feel like I've got a lot inside of me to do. And so we've definitely had our kind of challenges, and because obviously partnering with someone, you have very different ways that you think about business, and your different values, or in terms of like the lens of business, you have different ways in how you want to invest the money. So there's a lot of negotiation that goes on behind the closed doors to figure it out. Then on top of that, it's like, okay, so we've got to narrow our niche and narrow our offer and our product, and doing all that journey as well. Plus we both have separate businesses as well, and so this isn't the only thing that we're both focused on. And so there's kind of a lot of kind of juggling. But I don't necessarily, even though there's a little bit of a fear, there's a bigger, I feel like this is the best choice and decision that I could have made. Like I've been incredibly grateful for the journey that I've had with him over the last year. Like I feel like, one, not only that I'm like creating a friendship and a bond with someone, with the work that we do, as well as a friend, it's just been really a huge growth experience from doing business with him to also like, what are we actually doing, and what difference do we actually want to make in the world, and what impact do we want to have? So I feel like it's definitely been, because a lot of people say don't partner with someone, like it's the worst thing you can do. But it's like, well, how come people aren't saying, well, don't go and get into a relationship with someone, because the worst thing that you could do? Like, it's like, well, that might be other people's maybe challenges and perceptions that I have, but I don't know, like I feel like there's a beautiful synergy between our vision of what we want to create, the mission that we have. We're very aligned with who we want to serve, and the depth at which we want to serve as well. So I feel like there's just like a lot of synergy between it. Is it for everyone? Definitely not. And so it forces me to kind of show up differently, and definitely it challenges me to make sure that I'm communicating. And if one of us feels shut down or feels unheard, then, or not heard, that we have to we have to work through it, because it's felt within the business straight away. So it kind of pushes both of us to show up and do our emotional, mental work often, so that we can deliver the best quality service for people. So I feel like it's not only a professional growth that we're having, but we're also having a lot of personal growth on the journey as well.
What have you found in a partnership that you couldn't have found with a marketing director or somebody like this?
I feel like because we're both in it together, I feel like we're both on a shared journey together. And so we're both equally invested into it. And not saying that a marketing director or someone else could come in and wouldn't be, because there are definitely people who are out there. I just felt like I just felt like I wanted to go on a journey. Like I felt like it's been pretty lonely the last, like that's all I've done is business on my own. And I guess I wanted to also have a different experience that I haven't had before. Like I haven't done business with someone else, and I'm sometimes going through experiences some of my clients go through and to kind of understand their world a little bit more. And because a lot of my clients are business owners, that it's this, a lot of my private clients are business owners, so it's this beautiful opportunity to really kind of learn more about business, make this just do a lot of learning. And so I'm finding, like, from a professional point of view, it's helping me with my private clients, because I'm getting to really understand at a felt deep level sometimes some of the struggles and challenges that they go through, because we're also going through something similar as well.
You said that it's not for everyone. What do you need to be qualified to be partner?
I don't know. If I look at what I was looking for in Justin, or what I was looking for in an individual, because I love what I do. I'm very inspired. I'm dedicated. I'll, like we talked about, days of a head down, bum up, and just, focused. And so what I was looking for was someone who particularly loved the application and the implementation of the work that I do, because they showed that they loved it. So I didn't want someone who could talk about it and who talked a big game. I just wanted to have someone who showed that their life demonstrated that they applied the work. So that was definitely important. And so also the thing that clicked with me with Justin, as there was one particular class that I had, because he was a member of my community for a couple of years before he came on. And so there was one particular class, and the class was, we have this community co-working space, which we call like the geeks of the group come out, hang out, and we do the work together. So he's doing his work and everyone's silent. Everyone's doing the Demartini method, doing different versions of the method. And at the very end, we do this wrap up and share the last 10 minutes. And I said, okay, Justin, what have you been working on? He goes, well, I've been working on my 250-year vision, financial vision for my family. And I'm like, whoa, tell me about that. And he goes into like the detail of like and mapping out what that looks like over 250 years. And I'm like, whoa, it's blown my mind, because I'm just thinking about my life and my daughter's life, my daughter's life after I pass. But I'm not thinking 250. That's like 4 generations time. I'm like, whoa. And so when I was thinking of an individual, in like just someone that I felt like I could join with, because he had demonstrated the work that I do, and he also demonstrated this amazing, beautiful, vast vision that he had for his family, I was like, well, that's it. Like that, I didn't necessarily look for, it wasn't like a list of things that I wanted and then I looked around. It was, I just looked at my current community of people and I thought, who have I seen that is just amazing at what they do and that could join in together? And it was just like he definitely showed that his long-term vision, we had very similar values. He loves the work. Coaching is important for him. Making a difference is important. So I felt like, he was the best kind of synergy between the two of us.
Yeah. It's inspiring, the 250 years vision.
I know. Yeah. It still blows my mind.
Yeah. Good. Is there a subject or message that we haven't talked about that you would love to talk about?
Can we talk about existential crises?
Yeah.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Have you ever had
one? Yeah, a lot. But the last 2 years for sure. Since I've worked with you.
No one will want to walk with me.
Yeah.
How has it been for you?
Sorry?
How has it been for you to go through the crisis and start to come out the other side?
it wasn't unpleasant. Uh, uh, it's like I've lost my drive and my desire to create things and to build things, but it felt like a retreat, a retreat where I can appreciate life. And maybe I had times where I was like frustrated, but not so much. It felt like a retreat where I'm just, a retreat. Yeah, it really felt like a retreat, but I think all the tools that I have gained during the last 10 years have helped me a lot to navigate through this phase. But sometimes people are like describing this as they are depressed and it's they want to suicide or something like this. For me, it was more like I feel different than the world. It's like I feel different. I don't have the same desire. I don't relate to a lot of people and to what they are believing, but more like 2 years of observing the world and observing myself. it's what I would describe that.
And is it like a phoenix rising moment? Do you feel like you're coming into yourself again now, or or something?
Yeah, for sure. And and it questioned me. It questioning me about. I don't know if you remember, but maybe 18 months ago, we had a conversation, we had a coaching where I was telling you that I didn't really have a clear vision and I didn't really have a goals and all of that. And you asked me a question, which was, can you tell me about your relationship? Because maybe there is there is a link between her and between you and between your dynamic, because she has a vision, she's really engaged, she's really focused on their goals, and I'm the one who balanced the dynamic. And in the last month, she signed for the house, and the house was the dream of her life. And so it was the end of her project. Like, it was the end of her project. And at the same time, it's the beginning of my project. So it really made me think about, do I really have control about when do I have an existential crisis, when I am inspired, or am I part of something bigger and I'm not really choosing? I just need to play the role that life is asking me to play now.
I mean, it's a beautiful question, because it's like, how much are you dictating your life, or how much is being dictated to you? If we're entangled in this beautiful dynamic with everyone else in the world, and depends on what our partner is doing, depending on what we're doing, it can impact and influence us. So, but then at the end of the day, we have choice. Like, we still have a choice. And so even though we're kind of can be in an entanglement, say with your girlfriend, where she's like off, and your partner, she's off and having a drive, and then you're kind of like figuring stuff out, and now you've got to drive, and now she's kind of figuring stuff out. And so there's this like entanglement. But you can also be entangled with another couple down the road, or a brother and sister, or another family dynamic, and be entangled there. And so it's both of you are the go-getters, and then the other dynamic is not really doing much. And so there are multiple ways in which we can be entangled in a dynamic. But if we think that, oh, no power and I can't do anything because it's part of the dynamic, then we can feel very, we could just go with the flow and just go where life takes us. Or we can still, and sometimes that can feel, and then some people can feel disempowered because they're like, well, I have no control. Well, but you do. Every decision that you make is your decision that you can make. And so if we then start to feel and see the bigger picture of what's actually happening, that can break through our feeling of not having much control. But it also can get us stuck in it as well, because the moment you saw the dynamic with you and your girlfriend, you're like, oh, well, then I'm playing the opposite side. But maybe you needed to go bigger than that. Maybe you needed to get a bigger dynamic, like of the world, that there are couples that are out there that are like go-getters and couples who are not. So I don't know if I necessarily have a particular answer for you in terms of, or like an insight for you. I just think that at the end of the day, there is an element of the outside world dynamic playing a part, but there's also your freedom and choice in every single moment. Like, what do you want? And maybe there was a period of time where you went so hard and so much and you because you can't get a gain without a loss, and a loss without a gain. So if you put so much effort and emphasis into a career and you focus, and you get amazing things out of it, you can't do that without losing something. And sometimes at some point in our lives, whether this happened for you, I'm not sure or not, but it comes to a point where, hang on, maybe I want to embrace and empower all areas of my life, not just one or two areas. And so then it's like, oh, hang on, things have really got to change and shift, because you want that empowerment in spiritual, mental, vocational, family, social, financial, physical, and you want to put energy and emphasis into everything. And so then to do that, you have to let go of some things in order to gain something else. So I think that's potentially just what we call an existential crisis, because all of a sudden you're like, hang on, I want that life. My current life is like this. And so you're just going through the transition, and how beautiful it was at a time where your partner is like making resources and on fire and focused, and you can just go inward. And what a gift that she had to be focused on her thing, because she wasn't bugging you or distracting you from your journey.
Do you want to say something else about existential crisis?
I just feel like if someone's going through it right now, and it happens to be like the whole world has felt like it's turned upside down and they're not really sure what's happening and where they're going, what I would love people to know is that no matter what you go through, that there is a hidden order and reason. It's just that sometimes what I love about this work and the work that I do is we find and extract meaning of what goes on, but sometimes it's like not until time happens that on reflection of that time we're like, now I get it. Now I get it. So it's got a balance. We can find meaning and extract it out of it and find benefits and blessings. Sometimes the puzzle piece, the million pieces of puzzle, we're trying to put the puzzle back together. Sometimes that bit of puzzle piece doesn't fit in until something in time happens. And then when it does, you're like, now it makes sense. So we sometimes just have to have some patience and waiting for that moment to happen for you.
Yeah. I think our main power is not to change things during an existential crisis, or I think in life in general. I don't believe anymore in the forcing mode, and I believe more in the power to appreciate what's inside you, what you're going through, and if you appreciate that, things change or not, but you will have a beautiful life.
Yeah, because so many people go through a crisis and they want out of it.
Yeah.
But the beauty is within it.
Yeah.
kind of like I do this divine designing at the beginning of every year, and one of the questions asks like, where have you been? And one of the times when I sat in that question asked, where have I been? And I sat with it and I was like, where have I been? I'm like, I've been in the fire. And I'm like, if I go back and recall the moments that I've really been in the fire, it's actually where I get the most information, the most learning, the most realizations, because I sat in it. Like, I didn't try to escape from it. I didn't try to rationalize it. I just went, you know what, I'm going to feel all my feelings. I'm going to feel the fire, and I'm just going to sit with it. And then I'm going to do the work on it. So sometimes just being there, because it's the avoidance that actually makes it last for longer, rather than just go, I'm just going to feel. And what's beautiful about feelings is they're fluid and they change. So you never stay stuck in a feeling. You just move through it.
Yeah. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you for your time, for your wisdom, for your presence. It was a great moment, and I'm really grateful for your presence.
Thank you, Julian, for having me.